Welcome to The Growth Switch, the podcast where we dive into the strategies, struggles, and breakthroughs of bold business leaders. I'm your host, Jules Fox, the growth strategist and content creator at Aries Media. I'm here to uncover how today's top brands are scaling, overcoming challenges, and unlocking sustainable success. For those of you just tuning in, Aries Media helps grow successful brands with comprehensive, hands-on support for sales, business development, and performance marketing. Drop growth into the comments if you want to learn how to do that. Now, today we are lucky enough to have Chris Burkhard on the show. He's a fourth-generation entrepreneur, president of Placers, and a thought leader redefining workforce solutions with his human-first approach. He's got over 25 years of experience, and he's gotten Placers into the Inc. 5000 company. Just so excited to have you on the podcast. Chris, welcome.
Hey, it's great to be here. And I think sharing common ground about growth stories and growth challenges sounds like a good time.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, let's jump right into it. When you first started your company, what was the market need that you thought that you wanted to fill?
So I'll start with this story. I actually started the business the morning of 9/11.
Oh, wow.
So just to reflect, I'm that old, but I also would ask everybody to pause and think about where they were. And if you think about that moment, I mean, obviously it was not about Chris Burkhard. It was not about my company name. It was, a national story, an international event, and it just made it hard to go forward with the business. There was this pause, and one of the greatest lessons ever. First employee started at 8:30. The world changed at 8:44. But to answer your question, I am fourth generation entrepreneur, second in the human capital space. And what I saw at the time, it's a sales podcast, right, is that there's an awful lot of selling that sounded like, do you want to buy a duck? 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 Just as repetitive. Do you have any business? Do you have any business? Do you have any business? And I was taught two things. I was taught to sell consultatively, but the only way I ever learned to do it was to make sure the little company I was building was interesting, had a cool culture. Maybe I had some thought leadership that makes sense. These are very contemporary ideas 20 some years later, but at the time, I think they were kind of unique, right? And still, I think they're unique. You're kind of doing things the right way, not the quick way. So I took that a step further and basically had a human resources consulting business that did, deliverable work. So I took the consulting and literally made it a product to start. So that's sort of how I birthed the product. For those old enough to remember the Jerry Maguire story, he was an agent who saw how the world acted and he wanted to do it his own way. My first business plan was 88 pages, Jules. So I totally had my Jerry Maguire moment, like how I was going to change the world, how everything was going to be different. But my founder thing was about service. We call it nth degree, the idea that service could be taken to an ever ratcheted up level. So foundationally, that was my thing.
Okay. Yeah. You have this idea opposite the crowd, and you co-authored a book with your father about that too. Tell me a little bit more about the opposite the crowd philosophy.
Sure. Well, if you just think about the notion of it, I think it's safe to stand with the crowd. If you make a mistake, nobody notices, right? You can kind of blend in. If you're not really sure who the heck you are or what you really want to be, it's kind of safe there. Yeah. So to go against the grain, to do the opposite of what most people do, or quite honestly, to know yourself so well that you're just going to make your own decisions and not go with crowdthink is really hard. So opposite the crowd is about really knowing yourself, knowing your own culture, Jules, and then realizing that drives where the heck you want to go with your life. It makes it a lot easier than chasing shiny objects. Now, my dad was my mentor. The book is a father-son story of his best practices that became mine. So it's a story of sales and leadership and service. And we've got ideas about, how individuals should approach careers and things like that. But it's a cool book.
Yeah. Actually, it looked like a cool book. I'm excited to read it. Haven't read it yet, but it's now on my back burner list. I read a couple books a month, so I'm excited to take a look at it. All right. So this has probably affected your company significantly, being a fourth generation entrepreneur and coming up with something that does, significantly stand opposite the crowd. Placers has been recognized for the rapid growth and as a top place to work. And there's got to be a reason behind that. So how do you balance scaling your company with maintaining that strong work culture that people love being a part of?
I wish it were a one-word answer, right? We just made the Inc. list 9 years in a row.
Yeah, congratulations.
So 14 times overall.
Yeah.
So what I would say, it's a foundational system, right? Like it's not our theme this year is Ed Milet's one more, but we didn't get there by making one more sales call or sending one more email, right? Like that's not really what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
What I think is key is, and I don't know if people are fans of Vern Harnish and his book Scaling Up, but having an operating system for a small to mid-sized business by which you do things, like how do you communicate as a business? How do you report as a business? How do you pull people together as a business? Having a business system, whether it's EOS or Scaling Up or some other operating system by which you grow it, is really critical, because what you realize, I spent most of my early years creating things that existed. I still grew, and it was bloody chaos sometimes through that growth. But the last 15 years have been growth without drama, because I've used existing tools for org charts, existing tools for scorecards of resumes, you kind of get it. Like, don't recreate the stuff that's the space in between. Like, plenty of room for culture and ideas and people, but don't get bogged down with the systems that already exist.
Yeah.
Being solutions-based selling in an industry that sells ducks, I'm telling you, that is where it's at. Now, I've worked hard at leadership. Mm-hmm. We're not perfect, we're not, but we're in an industry that when I first got into it, well, not when I first got it, but in the last 15 years had a net promoter score of a -3.
Yeah.
Like people, the audience may not have reference to that, but if you run a business, you sure do. I still think the industry is around 10. Mm-hmm. And we're like a 35, 40, 45, pretty darn good, and been as high as 60. But it's really, it's a tough industry to you don't end up with an Apple 70.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good goal to shoot for, but absolutely, in reality, that may not be feasible. All right. So, we've got this awesome company. We've got this awesome individual running it, but, life is not always that magical fairy tale when you want to start your own company. What are some of the biggest problems that you faced when you were trying to grow your company?
Man, I think starting the business the morning of 9/11, if that isn't a true story of, the cool part was I realized that all the problems I was creating were my own. They weren't my boss's. So that was kind of cool, like that reality. I once had my office building caught on fire the morning of 2011 Super Bowl. Yeah. And it was 17 degrees, and in the office there was 6 inches of water, and it was snowing, and no one would come because the Super Bowl was on. Like the fire department was slow and the electrician. In the end, it was the best thing that ever happened, because overnight we went with voice over IP phone software. Overnight we went with Google Business for our workstations. This is an era where that stuff, you still had servers in your office, Jules, right? Like you still had phone systems on the wall.
Yeah.
I know that'll make everybody crazy, but they were such barriers to innovation and growth. So in the end, we survived it and pivoted to tools that are much more flexible. But I oftentimes had to use things that were brand new like that to get through it.
Yeah.
But the real answer to your question is an entrepreneur, a business person, only quits when they're done. Such an obvious statement. But there is a lot that's hard about a business. You have a customer that owes you $2 million, or you get a text at 6 a.m. with an employee that quits. I mean, these are real things, not just that story of it's a Sunday night, how the heck am I going to meet payroll? Think it is, someone said to me recently, Jules, the most impressive thing about me is that I've been steady at the wheel for 24 years as COO of my business. The reality is that's the most stressful thing about it.
It's just constantly showing up and doing the work every day, no matter what.
Yes.
Yeah. So, it sounds like you guys, you're such a storyteller, right? You've got my mind spinning. It sounds like you guys accidentally invented remote work, due to a fire. I mean, that's a pretty fantastic story that deserves to be told,
So my COO, she's my COO today. We literally bought that at 1 a.m. on a Sunday night. And we were like, Google told us we were the 6th customer to buy it.
Yeah.
It's like, we was like, I hope it works.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, now it's so, of course you do that these days, but
it's ubiquitous. It's everywhere.
Yeah, right. At the time you were just thinking opposite the crowd, you were thinking like, okay, well, we're going to find a solution for this no matter what. We're just going to fix it.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So like, internally, that can be an issue for sure. Now, externally, having done this for 2.5 decades, I'm sure you've been through some crashes. I mean, gosh, you started in probably one of the biggest market crashes of all time. Like, outside of the Great Depression, you went through that those huge down markets and stuff like that. So currently, like the market is pretty grim at the moment in the U.S. How do you pivot? Like, how do you just keep going, and how do you keep getting clients even when there's not a whole lot of business around?
That's like the ultimate question. So a little bit about what you said. My strength is I show up every day. Let's not lose that for your audience. Of most people don't. So the advantage of showing up every day, and not that this is something that's relevant in a podcast, but this is being recorded on a day where I'm not sure all the workforce is working on a Friday afternoon, but I am. Not that I don't want to paint myself as a Neanderthal. It's not the point. It's that my willingness to kind of put my day up for review. And am I making a difference for my company? Am I making a difference in thought leadership? Like I get passion from this. So, that's a source of energy to do it.
Yeah.
But what you're talking about is such an interesting challenge. The first thing is we've really tried to focus on our existing customers and really make sure they're taken care of. We've also really then focused on recent customers that were not active, right? Like really getting close to them. We really spend a lot of time asking the questions of how are we doing? How are you doing? How's your industry doing? Let me tell you how my industry is doing. The 4Q questions, like we've lived by that.
Yeah.
And we're trying to really focus on fundamentals. So the fundamentals of things like lead generation, the fundamentals of being visible, the fundamentals of taking care of people, of making sure we execute. We're in the service business, right? So it's really easy to drop the ball on any aspect of service in a relationship.
Yeah.
So trying to really look at the checks and balances of that. And then, so what is happening in the staffing space? So I just saw it today. I was on one of the business social media sites. I mean, more layoffs today in the industry. Industry's down 2 years in a row. So what you have to do is hunker down, make sure everybody knows that a small business can make a difference, use technology and automation. I'm from the generation that solved problems by hiring people and using Excel spreadsheets.
Yeah.
So I had to learn not to do that because I don't think people can do that in this market at this point. I really don't.
Yeah.
So, and realize that you live to, the thing is this too shall pass. That's what I've been through. You're talking about that 07, 08 timeline that's so interesting. Well, the reality is I lost 90% of my business in 90 days. And I had to pivot. And that's when I got into the temporary staffing industry. I was really only doing recruitment outsourcing at the time. So,
Right.
That's the ultimate pivot, right? And now it's a mid-market company.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is, hey, sometimes innovation comes from those hardships, and the companies that didn't innovate, well, they're not around anymore, so.
Yes. And, so for entrepreneurs, is it innovation? Is it stick-to-itness? Is it, sometimes you're out of money, sometimes you're out of ideas, but there's always a path forward.
That's quotable. I mean, hey, that's a soundbite right there. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. No, I get it though. Like I think there is like an old school like work ethic of just showing up and doing it. My wife asked me what I wanted for my birthday this year. She said, "Do you want something special for your birthday?" I said, "Yeah, I just want like a nice, like uninterrupted work day. I just love what I do. I just love showing up and writing. I'm a writer, I'm a creative.
Yeah.
And so it charges me up. At the end of my work day, I'm like, man, that was great.
So it's funny you mentioned it. I just did a minute and a half podcast video on what I've learned about interruptions. That I used to think days were perfect. And this is not me trying to make myself look good. This is like what I really learned is I used to think perfection was like, oh, the dog won't bother me. My kids won't interrupt me when I'm on the conference call. Oh, I won't get that second call while I'm in the middle of the first one. Oh, I won't get interrupted by the problem during my focus deep time, right?
Right.
And what I've really realized is that all you can do is focus on, like, if your kids are there, you better stop what you're doing. You need to focus on them, right? And if something else is like, so try to pivot that focus.
Absolutely. Yeah.
A lot of people say it's really hard, then you'll never get back to what you were at. But I can tell you 35 years of trying to do it all at the same time doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And then also, when you are able to give something your deep attention and that focus, it's that much more special. I think that, for instance, my daughter's 10 years old. She loves spending time with me still. She's at that age where that's still a really fun thing for her. And she recognizes that I am actively, when I'm actively with her and engaged with her, that time is so much more valuable because she knows that I have all the other stuff, the other work that I need to do. So she knows that when I'm with her, there is that sacrifice. And I think it's the same with business, is that when you are deeply engaged and passionately engaged with your business and doing the thing you love, like they realize, oh yeah, okay, he is here with me right now doing the thing that we need to be doing versus walking the dog, hanging out with the wife or the kid, or any number of things that we could be doing. The fact that we show up and we are in the business and present for the business and actively engaged, I think that makes all the difference.
I think I'm a latecomer to Stoicism, to the philosophies of the only thing we control is what's between our ears. But I think you're right. That idea of engagement, leaning into whatever you're doing and not splintering yourself, it's so hard to do. We're all human. But I tell you what, it's a lot more, you know what? And the 10-year-old will call you on that shit. Excuse my expression. But because they know when you're really there and they know when you're reading the book, looking at your phone like this, don't they? Boy, do they know it, I've been caught doing that, although my kids are 30 today. So.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah, absolutely. And now you mentioned giving up the Excel sheets, because our future is headed in a vastly different direction. And I think that it's so complex and different right now that we kind of don't even know what we don't know about the tools that we have access to. So that is the complex way of saying, how are you embracing the future with all of these new workforce innovations? How are you embracing that future and using them for your company?
So first off, I'll stick to my guns on my operating philosophies. And a lot of times I find the newest and latest technology is used on, slide 3 of the deck to sell what somebody's selling, but it takes a while for it to actually make a difference. I'm not saying that new technology isn't a disruptor. My goodness, the stories I've told today are nothing but technology being a disruptor in my life.
Yeah.
But what I have found in my industry, that we wave a flag of the new technology to grow sales, whether it works or not. Mm-hmm. So I have somewhat of a muted view that I want to see it work. I want to see it become a part of, the bit of the mainstream. Yet, as I look around, the fact that we're doing this, we're using, Riverside as a tool thousands of miles away. Did you ever think all your business meetings would be over video, right? Or that we don't have hardware in the office where every laptop is a phone. And then all our systems are integrated, right? Like in all our ecosystems, our onboarding is integrated, our background is integrated, all our text communication is integrated with our primary system. Like that's not impressive, but not everybody has it done, like where it's all in one ecosystem. Yeah. So all of that is really kind of interesting. Yet, and what we're really getting at is what is this new technology going to do? Well, I can tell you, you're not doing spreadsheets and people. What it is doing, what I see, it is taking tasks and giving people the thinking part of the task. Our back-end accounting software now does many of the functions on its own. You have to have thought leadership to review the work. Mm-hmm. You don't have to do it. Right. So you do a bank reconciliation, it'll do it for you, and then you look at it, right? Like, so it saves 6 hours, right? But, my payroll department was 3 people and now it's 1. Does that tell you what technology does to the world? My dad's payroll department back in the day was 13.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was the old Daisy printers and 13 people producing checks. So technology's made a big difference. Now, I think the market, what I'm seeing, this is, how do I say this in a way? Because I want to be supportive. But a lot of the industry software out there doesn't have the R&D budget really to pump up the AI into its products right now and do the acquisitions. When I'm down, they're down. So it's a it's that recessionary kind of thing. Like some people will risk and pump capital, borrowed capital in. But right now, what I actually see is everybody kind of hunkered down. And I hope one of them gets to it soon. Yeah. But they're just hoping I hire more recruiters and salespeople and sell more licenses so that they can pump their ideas into their solution, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, makes sense. Well, hey, Chris, it's been fantastic speaking with you. I think we have some real gems on the show, and I just think that our listeners are going to really enjoy listening to it. So, really appreciate your insight. Thank you so much for showing up and being with us, and I really appreciate you.
Do you mind if I share where people can find me? Would you mind?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. In fact, I'm going to put all the hyperlinks down below
Cool.
of everywhere, and they can link directly to you. But I would love to hear it from your mouth.
All right, great. So we're talking about my staffing firm. It's www.myplacers.com.
Hmm.
You can find me at chris@myplacers.com. But I'm also chris-burkhard.org if you're interested in me and some of my ideas and other things I do to help people figure them. The opposite, the crowd stuff of helping people figure out who they are and what they want for life. I tend to do that for fun. But Jules, thanks for taking the time today and appreciate the energy you brought. It makes it easy to have fun.
Yeah, of course. No, I really enjoyed the conversation as well. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.